Welcome back to the Manor. Julian McBain here, and this is my 47th Saturday vlog. So we're still just the housekeeping portion of this. We're still hunting Berry Club at Club Royal. I'm on rank 21, not giving up now. So housekeeping over. So I was listening to Dr. Peterson's biblical lectures because he parses the book into the philosophical meaning behind the stories, and I'm not going to get into the in-depth portion of that in this vlog. That's not the point of it. But he mentions, because he discusses dreams a lot. You know, it's dreaming is very important to psychology. We cannot remain sane without REM sleep. And so even those people who think they don't actually get into REM sleep, you get into REM sleep, you just don't remember it. Or maybe it's not as deep as it should be. But it does happen. And so one of the things that he mentioned is that video games are a form of dream. And I thought that was a very interesting take on it, because it's not untrue. You know, a video game is the digital rendition of a person's dream that has become some form of reality, even if it's not in analog space. And so, in essence, us by participating in these games, global 30.07. So for us participating in these games, in this shared dream, we're able to take ourselves outside of the real world that we contend with on a day-to-day basis and contend with a different type of challenge. And for a lot of games, that's the hero's journey, right? Because you contend with increasingly difficult obstacles along the way. And at the end of those obstacles, you have the ultimate challenge. You fight the big villain, or you fight the monster, or you fight your own memories, or you fight your own shadow, like in Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts has a huge amount of allegory attached to it. I think it's in a very... Square Enix and Disney did an amazing job with that particular set of games. Especially the first one. It just... The idea of having to face down and contend with your shadow, and then become your shadow, and then fight your shadow again. It was just amazingly well done, and I think there's a lot of philosophical aspects to the game that are greatly underappreciated. And now I want to play Kingdom Hearts, and I can't because my PS2 is in the chest, and I don't have a television. I use a monitor, not a television, and so I'm not able to play, which really disappoints me. I wish they'd port that to PC. I'd totally do a Let's Play series on that. But anyway, so video games as dreams. They're... I don't know. In a lot of ways, he's right. It's a form of dream, but it's a form of dream in which we can share a mutual reality with each other. Because, and especially in a game like Entropia Universe and MMOs broadly, and to a lesser extent other multiplayer games, because all multiplayer games have nuanced facets to them. But particularly MMOs, because you're expected to play the role of a character that represents you in the world, as opposed to a pre-built character that has been has lines and things like that, like in a JRPG or in a single-player RPG. An MMO gives you the greatest amount of technical flexibility, and I just screwed that up relatively royally. Did I forget to pack the rest of my ammo? I did. Okay, that's fine. I dumped most of my ammo in the terminal. So we're sharing this reality, and we share this set of rules that we all agree to live by, and those rules are often set by the players themselves within the confines of the engine in which they are playing. And that's no different than society. You know, we create a social structure within each individual type of game, and we follow the rules that game is based around, which is why in some games, people might be a lot more polite than they are in other games because the social aspects of that game create a set of rules that they abide by, and in some games it is required to be more polite than in others. Entropia Universe is one of the ones and I think it's because it involves real money. In fact, I'm 99% sure, because when it comes to real money, people respect each other when it comes to real money because it is so hard to acquire. We understand that you have to work to get the money you put into the game. And you can work inside the game to get that money, but it's a lot of work, and it's actually much harder work to do it inside the game than it ever would be outside of it. And so for most people respect that aspect. We do have pirates, but most people respect that aspect of this game, and they're like, okay, we understand that we have this world that we have all decided to live in, and we've decided that we're going to agree upon those shared rules, because Mindark, the only rules Mindark has in this game is certain aspects that are necessary to basic gameplay. There's a few missions, and there's a framework fiction, but even the framework fiction is extremely loose. And so we as Entropians are able to break down and create our own social rules within this game. We very literally have a separate world inside of Entropia Universe that is separate from our analog selves. And honestly, in a lot of ways, because we are not restricted by outside law to the extent in which you can have unrestricted rules. And I mean, yeah, you can't really murder each other because PvP is really restricted, and I understand that, and that hasn't always been the case, but I think that from a constructive standpoint, there's some wisdom behind that. But outside of some pretty standard limitations on gameplay, there are no rules. You can con people in this game. It's been done. It's actually, it used to be fairly frequent from what I understand, because some people just don't have any scruples, and the anonymity in the game makes it so that you can get away with it. Mindark is hands-off about this stuff. They're not going to get involved. They patently have stated they won't get involved. And so okay, we've agreed to a set of rules, and those rules are set by the players themselves, and they're set within the society that those players, we call them societies in this game, but they're guilds, and the guilds that we each play in, and they're set by social norms, and they're social norms that are local to Entropia Universe, and yeah, they're based broadly in a morality that we've learned in our own individual cultures, but this might be the most truly intercultural game out there because there's only one set of servers, right? So the servers are digitally geographic. They are not separated by region on an analog global scale, like in World of Warcraft. Blizzard has split it up into, like, you've got your Asia Pacific servers and your Eastern United States and your Eastern North America, Western North America, South America, PAL region, all of those things. They're all different servers, and they don't interact with each other. And you can log into a different server, although you likely suffer from lag issues or language barrier. But to do so, you actually have to go out of your way to do that. And in Entropia Universe, they have broken that wall down and just stated everyone plays in the same sandbox, and there's no regional adjustment between areas that you're in. You just have to contend with each other within this broad world. And so, like, you've got, in a given hunt, you can have an American and a Russian and a Chinese and a Japanese and a South American and a Venezuelan all doing a joint hunt. And none of you might be able to understand each other, although I have the feeling that the majority of people that play this game speak English. Even if it's a bit rough, and I'm not saying that to make fun of the people who speak rough English. It's a really difficult language to learn, and I applaud them for taking the time to learn enough to be able to communicate with people in this game. And it's also very ironic that it's English, because this game is a Swedish game, right? A group of Swedes put together a game, and the primary language in the game is English. You would think it would be Swedish, but it's English, which is a very smart move, because English, generally speaking, is the language of international trade. But at the same time, it's I think it's actually the second widest spoken language in the world. Spanish, I think, still comes out on top. From a geographic perspective. But so we contend with people from vastly different cultures, all within this one unified space. And I think it's a really good representation of what humanity is capable of, because we're able to do so in a fairly decent way. I mean, yeah, you get your assholes out there, you know, people who will deliberately tag mobs that you're trying to go after, or they'll kill sweat targets or things like that. Those people exist in every culture across all time periods ever. But I think it's an amazing thing, because virtual space comes with something that you don't have anywhere else, and that's anonymity. You are utterly anonymous in this game unless you decide to tell people who you really are. And YouTubers are relatively famous for that. I'm really well known for not really holding too much back about myself. But at the same time, you could be 180 degrees from the person you present to the analog world in this game, and people would just think that's the real you. And honestly, there's a good chance it is. And I mean, I'm not talking about when you're playing games like Call of Duty or Battlefield, or, you know, games where a certain amount of trolling is expected and that's culturally acceptable. But because this game has real-world consequences, but you're completely anonymous, you are able to bring out the truest aspects of yourself and contend with people without having to hide the underlying personality. And I think that is an extremely powerful thing. And I think it would be important for those who really study that aspect of the human condition to take the time and watch how the people who represent themselves as avatars in this game represent themselves to each other and to the society within the game as a whole. I think it would be a very interesting study. Because generally speaking, people in this game are extremely polite with each other. And it matches all of the... It matches a lot of the least restrictive socioeconomic factors you can possibly come up with, right? It's completely open economy. Yeah, MindArt kind of tramped on the absolute market by creating the market value system, but I think instead it didn't tramp on it, it just leveled it out some. And they do keep adding things that mess with the market, but that's just the nature of trying to balance the game out and make sure that people are able to enter the game and not be so far behind that they will never catch up to a certain extent, or they have the potential to catch up if they put the work in. Which is, you know, that's what I'm doing, is I've put a lot of work into the game. In 2 years, I've got 95,000 skill points. So I've almost hit that 6-figure amount, which is not an easy level to hit, but because I've put that time in and put the energy and the effort into the game, I'm able to achieve that in just 2 years. And yes, that comes with a certain amount of monetary investment too, which some people can't do, but that's all part of that aspect. And so I do think that MindArt is really onto something with this platform, and I really think that there is more to this platform than any of us really give it credit for. And I've said that several times in the past, but when Peterson said that video games are a form of dream, I really started to think about that. And I mean, really think and try to break down what the actual meaning behind those words could be, because we're dreaming a shared dream of a world that only exists as a series of zeros and ones and a bunch of microchips across the ether. Which ultimately is what a video game, an MMO, is. It's a shared dream broken down into zeros and ones that are parsed across the ether in real time. But it's a lucid dream because we're able to contend with it, and we're able to actually have an effect on the world that we are in, even if it's minor. And we can get together with other groups of people and have a bigger effect on the world we're in. It's almost a disturbing notion. Because for a lot of people, because there's a negative aspect to this too. Because anything that has a positive, there's always going to be a balancing negative. And I'm not saying the world is a zero-sum game. In this case, I believe that it is a net positive. But let's think about it. Let's really think about what could be negative about this. Because you've got things out there like video game addiction and gambling addiction, which Entropia Universe is not a true gambling game, but there's an aspect that can make it feel like that, because you're always going to put money into your skills. Or you're just going to waste your time sweating. And I'm not saying waste your time, but you're going to use your time sweating. I didn't mean waste your time, I should say. You're going to use your time sweating to gain the small amounts of ped to do the hunts for free, which is fine. That's a really difficult way to do it, and the people who do it are very, very... they're the ones who are going to go the distance. Because they contend with this game in the hardest way possible and continue to win. Even if their progress is slower. But there are negative aspects to the concept of that, because if this world is a dream, and gamers as a demographic tend to prefer their games over the analog world, that means we prefer the dream over the real world that around us, and that we're able and willing to get lost in that dream and sacrifice the real world for the dream, and that's not good. That's when it goes too far. And so if we are going to contend with this dream and have this dream, if we want to have nice things, we have to be willing to take the skills that we build inside the game for the patience and the tenacity, the ability to just continue to work at the thing until we get what we're looking for, and translate that tenacity into the real world so that we can contend with the analog as well as we can contend with the digital. I think then the whole aspect of video gaming as a whole would be a net positive for everyone. And there's always going to be those who can't cope with that. They can't contend with all of those pieces, but I think the majority of us do. And for the majority of us who can find that balance and do it correctly, it's why we're able to continue coming back every single week or month or however often we get to play games. In Sword Art Online, the main character, Kirito, said something very important, and it was heavy. The line between the real world and the virtual one is a thin one at best, because the person that you are in real life will come out in the virtual world. And so I think that as a tool, the most important thing that we as gamers can use video games, especially MMOs or Fallout 76 really isn't an MMO, but it's like an MMO. We'll call it an MMO for this particular case. The person you are in an MMO is going to reflect upon who you really are in your heart of hearts. But the more real-world consequences that are integrated into that game, the more real you are going to be. Which is why I think Entropia Universe is most likely the most real a person will be when contending with anyone across any culture for any reason ever. Now the question is are we responsible enough to be able to use these games the way that they can be? To use them as a way for us to contend with the aspects of our lives that we are having difficulty with. It's a release, but we can also use it as a journey of self-discovery. And honestly, I think that the story of Final Fantasy X is really good for that, and the story of Kingdom Hearts is really good for that. And they touch upon different aspects of the same notion that we're contending with our own inner demons. I'll have to think about that one a little more, because I think both of those really deserve their own vlog each. I'll have to write down notes for those, because there's a lot to unpack from each of those, and so I might have a couple topics for the future. So, okay, guys, I'm gonna call it here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. All right, all. I really appreciate all your support. You all have a wonderful night.